Welcome back to It's Only Money with financial advisor Scott Brown of Edgewater Family Wealth. EdgewaterFamilyWealth.com is the website, and that number again is 407-648-1881. Scott's right and left-hand man, Tammy, is here as well. I'm Ryan Holmes, and good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
We are doing it remote. Scott is in the beautiful state of South Carolina currently, but we have the technology in 2022 where everybody is with everybody at all times. So how's it going in the old South Carolina?
You know, it's quite beautiful here. It's about 5 or 6 degrees cooler in South Carolina during the day, and at night it's a nice 71 or 72 with a little less humidity than Orlando, I must say.
Oh, yeah. One of my goals in life is to retire in the Carolinas because it's weather, but it's not, too extreme. We just have the one season here, which is hot and less hot. And in the Carolinas, you get just enough cold, just enough hot. It's a beautiful place, but that is not what we're here to talk about. This is not It's Only South Carolina. That's not the name of this show. The name of the show is It's Only Money, and we always start off the way we always start off, which is the numbers with Tammy.
Talk to me, Tammy. What do you got for us today?
Numbers are great. Yeah, we don't have an intro music for that. Still
singing.
waiting on it.
Yeah, we're working on a South Carolinian barbershop quartet, but they didn't show up at Scott's.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They got lost en route, but that's all right. Let's move on with the numbers. What do you got for us, Tammy?
So first, everybody's talking about it, inflation, what's going on with it. Are we going or in the right direction or not? The good news is we kind of starting to move that direction. We see a number of 8.3, which is lower than 8.5 last month. That's a good point. It seems like the Fed policy is starting to work, we hope.
Mm-hmm.
Initially, to kind of look deeper into how is that being rolling into the market in general, we usually look at the housing market. Reason being, it is the most interest rate sensitive sector in the economy, ahead of durable goods and autos or automobiles. And there are some interesting numbers to look at on national level. We looked at the number of active listing homes right now, and we see about 516,000 homes. I know the number by itself doesn't mean much, but if you look at the fact that it is 8% year over year growth, that's a good factor. It tells us that there's 8% more houses active out there.
So that's more, Tammy, that's more inventory. When you hear realtors talk, they talk about inventory, how much inventory we do or don't have. And I think one of the challenges for home buyers over the last year or two is that there's just been no inventory. And when there's inventory, it gets snapped up. There's like 5 buyers for every seller. And what I think you're saying is that we're going to start to see the pendulum swing, probably not in Central Florida immediately, but certainly nationwide back to at least towards the buyer, if not totally to the buyer.
Pretty much, yeah. That's because it's median, so it doesn't take into consideration other factors, as you said. Central Florida, we have some numbers on that for particularly Orange County. Year over year, we have a decrease of 10%, to your point. So demand is still high. However, the good news is month over month, we have almost above 20% more active listing.
Oh. So this is the Fed. A lot of people are bemoaning the Fed action, rightfully so, I guess. In some cases, we have inflation is a problem, and certainly the cost of goods, or people going to Walmart or Target or wherever they go to buy stuff, that's increasing costs. Is the drive there costs more money because gas costs more money. So there's a lot of things to bemoan. But I think one of the goals of the Fed is to just slow the economy down a little bit. And in doing so, the rightful starting place is home prices. And while we don't like it sometimes while it's happening, especially if you're selling, it actually eventually the goal would be to make home buying a little more affordable to people on the lower end.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, pointing at the inflation bit, we talked about the US, but we know that it's not a US alone problem. We look at 6 of the biggest economies in the world, and we see insane, I'd say, inflation right now happening in Japan. Their inflation almost doubled. Also in China, we see about 30% up. The UK, the UK, Germany, and then to a lesser extent, Canada right now. But the good news is we're the only economy or developed economy that is starting to move in the right direction. The rest are yet to follow.
Ryan, what are you seeing in your world? Are like, do you have friends complaining about gas prices, housing prices? What's going on in Ryan's world?
What's going on in Ryan's world is I know you've talked about before that gas and food aren't part of the actual numbers of inflation. But my God, can I not get? I spent $170 at the grocery store the other day. I came home with almost nothing. Like it was insane. And to just look at my pile when I got home, because what I do is I try my best to carry all of the groceries out of the car at the same time and show.
Oh, I play that game.
Yeah,
I love that
to
game.
show my fiance what a man I am. And and then I put my pile of groceries onto the island in my kitchen, and it's like nothing. And I was like, and she's like $170. And that was the first time it hit me real hard.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, and I, like you, I also play the honey, watch how many plastic bags I can carry game. Because I only want to make one trip because, walking out to the driveway is such a task. I'd rather carry 17 bags
exactly. I'm busy.
And risk dropping the eggs rather than come back twice.
Not even dropping them, but crushing them.
What's that?
Not even dropping them, but crushing them by the weight of the other groceries that you're holding.
Yeah. It's all worth it though. So yeah, I mean, clearly inflation is a factor, especially to average everyday folks. And that bleeds into the housing sector and bleeds into a lot of places, which is unhappy as that makes me or it makes us. It is actually the intention of the Fed raising rates is to slow the economy down. So it's, as I've said a few times, it's an artificially induced coma for the economy. And the net result is hopefully long-term, it'll be better for us taking our medicine now rather than, say, creating a depression type situation. That is the goal. That's what we're trying to avoid. Yeah.
As I understand it, though, the definition of recession is it 4 quarters of like negative GDP, and it's 2?
Yeah, 2 straight quarters of negative GDP.
So are we on the precipice of one currently?
We are indeed on the precipice of one.
So,
and I don't know that it's and recession is a word that gets thrown around and people get a little nervous when but we go through it. I think somebody famously said recently that we go through this every 5 or 6 years. It's not new. It's part of the process. And if you view a recession as this catastrophic moment and will we survive kind of thing, you're missing the point. It's literally part of the process. And if you view it as such, I think it's easier for you to get through it emotionally.
Then how come we as American people especially are constantly surprised by it? Is it designed that way to surprise us, or is it the media's job? They make more money if they scare us more. I mean, if it is part of the process, every time one comes up, we act like we've never been there before.
Right. Well, that's the funny thing, right? Every time it happens, we act like it's never happened before. But literally, it happened like 4 or 5 years ago, and then 4 or 5 years before that. So I think you hit the nail on the head. First of all, the media, and I'm not a media hater, but there is some truth to the fact that bad news sells, right? It's, you never read Plain Land Safely because nobody cares. Right. It's always going to be hyping the bad news. And so when you're reading news, and I don't care what news channel you subscribe to, and I use the term subscribe on purpose, whatever news channel you subscribe to, whatever ideology is your, whatever your team is, it's all the same. Bad news sells. Nobody's going to come on the news tomorrow and go, oh, this just in, everybody's pretty happy. Things are okay. Yeah, we're having a bad moment here or there, but overall life's pretty good because people are going to turn that channel off. Right. So I think that if you understand recession is part of the cycle, it's a necessary, it's no different than a forest fire, right? Burning the undergrowth away so that the forest can prosper again. That is, and I'll say it till they throw me off, that is part of capitalism. Capitalism is messy. It goes in fits and starts, but it is to date, in my humble opinion, the best system we've come up with so far.
Yeah, the fits and starts. Yeah, it's built. You don't make money if there's not the down part. You know, if everything, because I would love to buy Google, but it's $1 million of stock right now, and I'm just like, go down, everybody go down. So I don't know. I look at it like that, but you've said it before. Your best advice is always to just like kind of be calm. Don't look at every day what your portfolio is doing necessarily. And there's not really a downside to just like riding out the recession. I guess if we're having one every 5 to 6 years, if you average lifespan is what, 75, so you're going to live through 15 recessions in your lifetime. That's chill.
Well, first of all, you just hit on a point. I just read that there's a 50-50 chance of someone being born today will live to be 100. So you're going to do this. You're literally going to do this 20 times in your lifetime. And if you act like it's a surprise every time, then we're going to have you tested.
Well, it could hurt. But what isn't a surprise, Scott, is how well Edgewater Family Wealth.com, their website is. They have a section on there called the content library, and you can see all the shows, various stuff that Scott and Edgewater Family Wealth. Tammy has a section on there. I've got a lot of Tammy heads out there that love to know what he's up to. We've got to come up with a name for Tammy's fans, but check
me see. We have a Fin Talk section there. It all talks about finance and
Finheads,
the market.
Oh, that's good. Well, all you Finheads, stick around. We'll be right back with more It's Only Money on Real Radio 104.1. Welcome back to It's Only Money with financial advisor Scott Brown of Edgewater Family Wealth. EdgewaterFamilyWealth.com is that website, and what a website it is. Like I said before, they do have the content library on Edgewater Family Wealth, and all of Tammy's Finheads are there because here's the fun fact for everybody. Tammy is putting out a video a little bit, and it's a market recap of the month of May. Tammy, tell me a little bit about this.
We talk usually on these monthly recaps about what the market did, any interesting things that happened, and there's usually always stuff happening. Any Fed policy changes, earnings sometimes, and some financial intricate details people ask us about. So,
and this I got to interrupt here. So, I mean, just to hear Tammy's accent on the videos is, I mean, you could read the back of a cereal box and it would be cool. So, you just, for no other reason, you got to tune in to Fin Talk with Tammy because of the accent, which I think is Northern Alabama, if I'm not mistaken.
Birmingham specifically.
Well, awesome.
Bingo. Hey, speaking of lotto, I got to tell you, I thought of this yesterday. I thought of our discussions about gambling. So last night, my wife and I went to see the Greenville Drive. Now, first of all, it's important to not say Greenville because it ain't two words. It's Greenville. And if you say it any other way, you're going to get looked at funny. But the Greenville Drive are a minor league single A team. And I was sitting in my box seats at the Greenville Drive, watching them lose 2-0 to Asheville, by the way. And in front of me was a guy playing a lotto game on his phone during the game. He was literally gambling whilst watching a minor league baseball game. And I thought to myself, this cannot be a good thing. You should not be able to pull your phone out and lose $30. And I don't know if that's what he lost, but I was watching him load the credit card information into his phone while watching a minor league game. So he wasn't even watching the game. He was just losing $30.
Oh, so yeah, I gotta agree with you on that. I think gambling has a little place in society, but there's gotta be hurdles for you to get there. You can't just like pull out a phone and do it. You gotta drive to Tampa, and you gotta really want to spend 2 hours in a car on the way and think about what you're doing with your life, especially on the way back.
Yeah. You got to want it. I agree. There should be impediments to this. And apparently we're doing away with those impediments, but I digress.
I felt that way about the phone, like with the phone though, with my trading app, because I was like, well, Amazon stock split, and I got to load up. I mean, there's so much in my account right now that I have access to, but I guess I could put more from my bank account and throw it in there. Cause if I feel like I'm missing out on something here.
Well, that's not by accident. They want it to be easy for you. There's a lot of things that are easy for us to do that probably shouldn't be. And that list is pretty long these days. But yeah, I just felt like I'm literally watching this guy gamble, and it gave me the creeps.
It'll hurt you. I think we need to direct that man towards Fin Talk with Tammy, because that'll help him in the long run.
Agreed. So, I was you were talking earlier about lifespans and somebody living to be, and it used to be, when Social Security was enacted in the 40s by FDR, the average lifespan of a person was like 65, right? So that's why Social Security started at 65, because they didn't want to pay anybody, right? Now we're living, 78, 80, 81, 85. It's not unusual to know a 90-year-old. When I first started in the business, I would be in a room full of 40 or 50 people giving some kind of spiel to somebody. And I would always ask, how many of you know a 90-year-old? And back then, this is like late 80s, early 90s, probably one hand would go up, maybe two. If you ask that question in a room of 50 people right now, almost every hand's going to go up. So we're living and think about, I don't know about for you, Ryan, but for me, my grandparents were old when they were in their 50s.
Yeah.
And their 40s. People looked old. They were tired. They were doing physical labor in many cases. People were just worn down. But now you got 60-year-olds, 70-year-olds jumping out of planes, water skiing. It's just a different animal. And one of the things I wanted to address, because I think I gave you the statistic that for every person born today, there's a 50% chance those people are going to live to be 100 years old. And you have to consider that. And I think the most important thing to consider there is retirement has changed. In fact, I even think retirement's a dumb word now. I don't even think it really exists to the extent it used to. And what I mean by that is I know I can probably think of a dozen people in their 70s who are still working. And not because they have to, but because what else are they going to do? They're going to sit in a room and vegetate and watch television and watch their health decline. We know statistically that not only financially, which I'll come back to, but physically, if we remain working and we remain active, we remain engaged with our minds, that we're going to live a happier, longer, healthier life. Now, when you think of it in terms of finances, think about a person who retires at age 65. They've saved up maybe $500,000, $1 million, whatever it is, and now they're not going to work anymore. So they have Social Security and say 40 or 50,000 their investments shoot off. They have to be mindful of what they spend. They have to be mindful of the drag, if you will, on their portfolio. How much am I spending out of this portfolio in good times and bad times? What does that mean to me? In a bad year, should I slow down? In a good year? But if you're working still, let's say you're working part-time, and there's certainly a void of people in certain professions going forward, that these retired people, those voids could be replaced by people who just want to keep working, right? It used to be we lose all these people in the workforce. They retired at 65. They'd never look back. Now I think people are saying, well, no, I don't necessarily have to do that. Statistically, I'll live a better life. I'll feel better. My finances will be a lot stronger if I make $30,000 a year or $40,000 a year at doing part-time what I used to do full-time for 70 grand or 80 grand or 100 grand. So I think these opportunities are out there. I'm seeing it every day. I'm seeing engineers who quote unquote sort of retire. Maybe they were making 80, 100, 120 grand a year, and now they're contracting back half-time, working 4 days a month, still making 40 or 50 grand. That 40 or 50 grand, Ryan, that they're making part-time, or for that matter, they could be a starter at a golf course, right? Maybe that's only 10 grand. Maybe that's 15 grand. But whatever it is, that's money they don't have to take out of their capital every year as they live on to age 100.
Well, I'm curious to see what you think the future of retirement is actually going to look like for someone like me. And we can talk about that coming up next with more It's Only Money here on Real Radio 104.1. Welcome back to It's Only Money with financial advisor Scott Brown of Edgewater Family Wealth. EdgewaterFamilyWealth.com, of course, is the website. That number again, 407-648-1881. And before we went to break, we were talking about retirement and the changing of retirement, especially for people my age and younger. And it's going to be a different animal. There's no, obviously the system that we have, I've always been told, you're never going to get Social Security, blah, blah, blah. And that's probably pretty true. But I see retirement as a whole, just a different beast by the time it gets to me, because I don't see myself retiring if I can log into a computer when I'm 90. You know what I mean?
Well, why would you? I mean, again, as we've just talked about in the last segment, we know that mental health is greatly affected in people who just stop working. The evidence is overwhelming. If you say, well, I'm retiring at 65 and by God, I'm going to do nothing, you're going to pay the price for that. We're not, human beings are built to work, in my estimation. We're built to accomplish, to grow, to chase, to hunt, to gather, to whatever, hunt and gather, as they say, right? That's what we're designed for. And our minds start to slip when we sit in front of the TV for 8 hours a day watching television very loudly, right? Because retired people turn the TV way up.
So loud.
But and to that point, in the year 2000, people aged 65 and older, 13% of them were still employed. Today, that number is closer to 20%, and it's expected over the next 10 years for that number to grow to 30, 40%. And I expect by the time you retire, Ryan, 50, 60, 70% of your peers will continue to work, because retirement to me is an outdated concept. And I think it's going to go away. That I say that and people are like, oh, I don't have to save now. No, that's, you have to have options, right? You don't want to work because you have to financially. You want to work because you want to. You know, for me, I've been a financial advisor for 35 years. And at some point, I'm going to do something else, which is weird for a 57-year-old man to say, right? To say, well, in my next life, I'm going to do this. But there's a decent chance I'll live another 20, 30 years. And I want to make sure that, you know, I've covered all the bases. I'd like to teach. I'd like to be a college professor or something like that, you know, with the elbow patches, smoking the pipe and the whole 9 yards.
Oh, man, you look so good in elbow patches.
Dude, I'm all about the elbow patches. So, you know, I think it's an outdated concept to say I'm going to do nothing. And as we discussed in the last segment, physically, when these laws were enacted in the 40s, most of us were farmers. We were carpenters. We were roofers. We worked in plants. We did hard physical labor. My grandfather was a carpenter, and it was hard physical labor. It wore him down. By the time that man was 60, he was pretty beaten up. That is not the case now. I have 80-year-olds, 85-year-olds who play tennis daily, do all kinds of golf, whatever it is. And I have plenty of 75-year-olds who still go to the office or still work part-time. And as we talked about in the break, there is a void of human beings to do some of the jobs that 55 and 60-year-olds are now doing. Right. So you're going to be able to call your own. If you're an engineer or a lawyer or a doctor or a physician's assistant or somebody who reads charts, any kind of technical job, especially, they're going to need you. So you're going to be able to negotiate a deal possibly where you say, look, I don't want to work 50 hours a week anymore. I'm 68. But what I do want to do is maybe work 10 hours a month. And for that, you're going to pay me $2,000 a month or $3,000 a month. And the rest of the time I'm going to go camping or I'm going to play golf or that is what I think your world's going to look like, Ryan. I think your peers are going to be able to say, I'm in a different phase now. It's going to be like 2 or 3 phases of job progression. And it's going to be the first phase is I work a lot of hours. I work really hard. You take advantage of me because I don't know a lot, but eventually I'm going to know a lot and I'm going to get older and I'm going to turn the tables on you. And companies are going to have to learn to deal with that potential change in employment patterns.
But now, being that statistically, you know, we're going to live longer, and if we are investing at a younger age and we're going to live longer, that just means, are all of us going to be super wealthy by the time we're 80 because now we have extra time where that money's working, as opposed to like a standard like baby boomer who passed away average age 75?
You know, I don't know if you're going to, I mean, everything's relative, right? So if the average, it's just like average income, right? If you say, well, if you'd have said 20 years ago, I make $58,000 a year. Oh, wow. Wow. Good for you. That's a great, good standard of living. I remember my dad in the 80s, I think it was early 80s. I remember he was making $35,000 a year. And I was like, man, we are on easy street, baby. This is, and that's obviously not the case today. So if everybody rises together, I would hope that's obviously the goal of any economy, or at least any well-intended economy. Which ours supposedly is. So if we want to rise everybody up, I don't, I'm kind of shooting myself in the foot here because of what I do for a living, but I still think it's critical to save. I still think it's, because to me, I thought about this yesterday as I was preparing for the show. I thought, what if it changes to where they're like 10-year segments in your your lifespan as an employee or a business owner, and you say, all right, from 25 to 35, I'm going to work, and then I'm going to take a year to retool. I'm going to go back to school. Maybe Google or Amazon has systems where you can go back in, rebuild yourself. You get that year off. Maybe your comp's the same. Maybe it's a little lower, and then 10 years later, you do it again. And 10 years later, you do it again. And we're seeing companies like Google and Amazon and other companies create their own education system, their own education infrastructure, where maybe colleges, they're going to maybe serve a different role down the road. I don't know. I certainly know our college system is broken and needs some severe fixing. And I think we're going to start to see a change in the way people view their working lives. I've been doing this for 15 years, but I'm taking that retool year or whatever they'll call it at that time to change my skills, maybe I just improve the skills I have. But I see the working life breaking down into 2 or 3 segments over the next 20 or 30 years.
It's got to be better than what it is now, because the thought, when I think about my grandfather, and he's like at the same job for 35 years. It's like, you mean he did just switch jobs every 4 to 5 years and go about it? But yeah, with the way technology works, and you can always learn to do something totally different. I mean, just this show alone, Scott, I feel like it's like me going to school, and I've learned so much just from this alone. So there's also that as well. But I think that it's, again, if you view it as and it's cliche, life's a journey, not a destination. But I think that holds true for this particular topic. I think that the days of somebody working, we went back and forth, right? So my dad, I think you said your grandfather, he worked 35 years for the St. Petersburg Times, did the exact same job, and he liked it. It was fine. I can't say he loved it. I'm pretty sure he wouldn't say he loved it, but he got a pension. Those things are going away. The pensions are almost gone the way of the dodo bird. So saving and building career savings, if you will, I think building academic savings in your mind, what you bring to the table should change every 10 or 15 years. And I think it's going to have to, because what happened to the generation before the boomers, or maybe even the beginning of the boomers, was what you just described as how they moved up was just to change jobs, right? They're just like, all right, I've been here 5 years. What will the guy down the street pay me, or the gal down the street pay me? And then 5 years later, do it again. And 5 years later, do it again. I see a shift going towards re-education, an ongoing and constant increase in skill set. Now, it's funny. I just thought to myself, all of my friends that I talk to, we've never talked about retirement where you just stop. Everybody I've literally talked to, now that I'm thinking about it, yeah, it's just I'll do this, and then on my 80s, I'll do this, and So when you have clients come in now, is that kind of the mentality for anybody below 40?
Yeah, I think so. I think the conversation is changing, and I think it's maybe even below, say, 45 or 50. I think, and even people in their 50s. That holds true. I honestly believe that people are seeing this entirely different. They're certainly not as beat up physically, and they realize for mental acuity, as they watch their parents age and maybe sit still for too long. I think people are starting to get that.
Yeah, my problem is gonna be well, I guess I can't. I got carpal tunnel syndrome now, so I had to cut way back on my gaming, but my 5 hours a week at the internet company works really well.
I can't speak to the carpal tunnel epidemic.
That literally happened to me the other day. That's why, because I was sitting there, I was like, man, my hand hurts, because I was doing a lot of clicking. I was editing some video or something, and I realized how much I'm just sitting there, click, 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 and I'm like, this is going to be a problem in the future. But the robots will have replaced my hand by then. That's how I feel. But also, that's my favorite take on retirement, by the way. Is by the time I get there, the robots will do everything. It's going to be so easy, barely an inconvenience. Thoughts on the robot future, Scott?
The robot future. Whenever I think of robot future, my only experience is Terminator, and somehow Arnold Schwarzenegger is involved.
You had Terminator and all this stuff. Kids now grow up with friendly robot stories, because I feel like we're being indoctrinated by the possible simulation that we live in. But more on that later. Edgewater Family Wealth is the website you want to go to, and that's where you can get a hold of Scott. You can use the contact us, or you can call the number 407-648-1881. Check out that content library, and we'll be right back with more It's Only Money here on Real Radio 104.1. Welcome back to It's Only Money here on Real Radio 104.1 with financial advisor Scott Brown of Edgewater Family Wealth. The left foot man Tammy is here as well. I'm just going to give him a different title every time. And if you want to get a hold of Edgewater Family Wealth, it's edgewaterfamilywealth.com or that number, 407-648-1881. And we do have a section where you can email us, believe it or not. The email is edgewaterfamilywealth@raymondjames.com. And that's where we put Scott in the hot seat and take listener emails. Scott, are you ready?
I'm so ready.
This first question is very interesting to me because I never thought about it this way. This comes from Philippe in Lake Mary. He says, Scott, I love the show, but I am scared to invest in new companies because it seems like they fail faster and faster every year. I used to think Peloton was a great product, and now I wouldn't touch it. What should I be doing? Are companies failing faster?
Actually, that's a very astute question, Philippe. The truth of the matter is they are. It used to be there was a study done on companies in the 50s that began in the 50s. So in the 50s, the average lifespan of a corporation, a big S&P type corporation, was about 35 years. In the 70s, that dropped into the mid 20s, and today that's in the mid teens. And what does that mean? That means from the most exciting beginning points to the hype and the pomp and circumstance that comes with new exciting companies to the day they die is getting shorter and shorter. And that doesn't mean every company is going to die. That doesn't mean that Caterpillars won't exist or Coke's, companies that have been around for literally 100 years, won't continue to become a thing. Amazon, hopefully Tesla, hopefully companies like Google will be around for many, many years. And I suspect that they will. But know that when you buy into a new idea or a new company, understand why you're doing it, understand a little bit as best you can about leadership and their long-term prospects. It's why it's important to not get too caught up in the hype. Sometimes the hype is real. More often than not, it is not. So when you recognize from the day a company is born, on average, to the day it's either bought out or fails or go into bankruptcy or whatever, changes in some large way, that has now been reduced to 14 or 15 years. And that's the expediency of change. Capitalism has this thing called creative destruction. We all read about it in our macroeconomics class back whenever we read those things. And it's a cool term, but what it basically means is if you can't cut it, you're going to be gone. That's how our system works. And that's okay. That's important. In fact, I would argue that one of the problems we face today is due to the fact that we haven't allowed that to happen enough. If you think about 2008, 2009, there are companies that exist today that really shouldn't. And some of them are big names. For example, Merrill Lynch should not be here in a real capitalistic society. You could argue GM shouldn't be here. And we've created a system that sometimes doesn't let the weak in the herd go away, which I do not think is pure capitalism. And I don't really think it's fair, because if Ryan Homes Incorporated was run poorly and went to go out of business, I don't think there's any senators coming to your rescue, Ryan. So creative destruction is a critical part of our economy and a critical part of our capitalistic system. And I would say understanding how quickly and how rapidly companies are coming and going are an important part of your decision making.
It seems like, bloat is a problem. Because, that time, I mean, Ford was failing. And it seems like these big companies that kind of rest on their laurels. I know they're doing work and they're doing the research and everything, but they're not young and hungry and trying to really wow anybody. I think like Ford, especially, the only reason I bought Ford was I was like, oh, you're finally doing an electronic F-150, which is very interesting and right up my alley. So I bought Ford and went through the roof and I'm like, great, super. But yeah, but the other problem with the market for me when I look at it, it's like something like Facebook, right? Like Facebook is a darling company, does it all. And then if they have competition, they just buy the competition, right? And they just bring it into the fold. And it seems like what we do is like, oh, everybody's like, oh, Facebook, yeah, I gotta get Facebook. But then we want to kill it. Like we're like, oh, what's the next Facebook killer? And then all the media coverage moves to that. Is Facebook dead? Is it that? And I could see where the Philippe would have the confusion where it's, everything seems like we build it up just so it dies. And how do you profit from that?
Welcome to America, right? So
Yay!
That's capitalism, right? And the strong survive. You may not like that. You may have issues with it, but that's our system. I think the problem is we've created a system where it's not pure. And I think people are frustrated by that because if you owned stock, sometimes these companies protect themselves by getting large and they have so many employees that the government's fearful of the unemployment issue that comes from that. And we could talk about that for an entire episode. What we have now is not so much pure capitalism, but a corporatocracy. And that's getting down a rabbit hole I don't want to go. But the fact of the matter is creative destruction is critical. You just need, as an investor, to understand it's happening faster. You need to recognize fads for what they are sometimes. And that sometimes it's hard to know a fad from a legitimate long-term business thing. Like, it's you look at Facebook, and I think when Facebook first came out, we thought, oh, isn't that cute? You can show your pictures of your grandkids and your vacation, but who cares, right?
Yeah.
Well, guess what? That's not necessarily true anymore. Facebook is a juggernaut. And to your point, Facebook is going to come under scrutiny, as are Google, as are Amazon, for antitrust things. Companies become so large that they start to control the entire infrastructure within which they work. And that becomes, I guess, for lack of a better word, a monopoly. And a monopoly is certainly not good for capitalism. And that's where government plays a role to nudge away from the monopoly. But again, my main point here is to understand that the expediency of destruction, for lack of a better word, is getting faster and faster every single day.
It seems like a good way to be. Just, I don't know. I'm an American. I see capitalism. That's what I do. And when I think about like, I'll hear about a company like that's from Japan, and they're like, "Yep, we've been in business since the year 1000." And
yeah,
and you're like, "Well, you only have 3 offices."
Well, Japan's a different, they have cultural issues in Japan in terms of these ghost companies that have been around for like you said, for very long periods of time, not profitable because there's a cultural bias towards face, right? Saving face, not harming anyone or making them ashamed. And it plays itself out on the corporate level. They don't want to kill companies. Their banking system is kind of set up not to embarrass people or put companies out of business, so they'll milk them along forever. I don't know that that's as true as it was, say, 15 or 20 years ago, but they had a huge problem with that in the 80s, where companies were just kind of zombie companies. They weren't really growing. They weren't really falling apart. They were just kind of existing. And I think here in this country, we've fallen into that a little bit for different reasons. A lot of it's political. Like, if you're the senator from the Detroit area and GM goes out of business, you need to fight tooth and nail to make sure that doesn't happen, even though maybe it should happen, right? So again, this is a conversation for a different radio show, I think.
Yeah.
We're going to dip our toe into politics and all that.
Yeah, this is not, it's only yen.
I think the reality is that as an investor, what you need to understand is the game's a little lopsided sometimes, but the game is still playable.
Is the game changing faster also now? Like the rules are getting faster and different. Because I imagine in the 80s, you could go like a 7-year run with everything sort of being about the same. And with the advent of technology, obviously, and the internet, things are from the phone now. Do the rules change much more rapidly?
I think the rules change a little bit. I suspect, I guess the rules must change along the way. More regulation. Crypto came along. There were no regulations for crypto, Right? No. We still don't really even know what crypto is, right?
I don't.
Many of us, myself included. So for regulators to wrap their head around it, sometimes they have these knee-jerk reaction. They overreact, they overregulate, and then somebody comes along and says, you've overregulated, then they underregulate. So understanding that dynamic and how it works and the pendulum swings back and forth depending on political winds and things like that. I think the speed of change is faster. But what I would say makes even more sense to me is understanding that means you should be more disciplined. You should stick to your guns. And some of the basics are, is this a good company? Are they going to be around in 5 years? Are they going to be around in 10 years? What does it mean to my savings? Do they pay a dividend? While they're going through their ups and downs, a company like Ford or a company like GM or a company like Microsoft, are they going to pay me a dividend while I go through these inevitable ups and downs? And are they going to come out the other side? So yes, I think you should understand the expediency of change, the expediency of destruction, but at the same time, stick to your disciplines. And I think that gets you through the aforementioned expediency of change and destruction.
A lot of complicated things that you just threw out there, Scott. And if you are out there thinking about your retirement or your money and you're like, wow, I don't even know where to begin, that's what Edgewater Family Wealth is for. That's what Scott Brown is for. That's what Team Tammy is here to help you with. Edgewater Family Wealth. And that website is easy, edgewaterfamilywealth.com. You just hit contact us. They've got a LinkedIn there as well. You can go to their LinkedIn. It's Edgewater-Family-Wealth. And you can see all of the stuff that we put out. It's really, really good. And I love working with these people. So do that today. 407-648-1881. Scott, Tammy, it's been a beautiful Sunday with you, and I hope to see you again next week.
All right. Have a good Sunday.
This has been It's Only Money on Real Radio 104.1.
Yeah, and clearly people are rich, right? Or wealthy. You don't have to be rich. I like the term wealthy better. I mean, to rich reminds me of like the Monopoly guy or something. But, they're people, they're regular people.
Now that guy I trust. You see the problem, Scott? You don't have a monocle.
Monocle is, now, if you can meet a guy with a monocle, I mean, like, I'm all in.
What was his financial advice? He said buy Park Place?
Where is that?
Where is that? I can't find it.
Tune in to It's Only Money with Scott Brown from Edgewater Family Wealth, Sunday mornings at 7 on Real Radio 104.1. Raymond James Financial Services, Inc., member FINRA SIPC. Edgewater Family Wealth is not a broker-dealer, is independent of RJFS.